Hey friends, welcome. Welcome to another live stream edition of Ministry to Muslims. We as a ministry do evangelism, apologetics, polemics, training, fellowship, prayer. We do a lot in regards to this Ministry to Muslims. So if you want to be a part of us, our website is ministrytomuslims.com. And our guest tonight, he's going to do a part 2 of what he did the last time a few weeks back. And so if you want to go to any of our archived episodes, just go to ministrytomuslims.com and then M2M Meeting Room, engaging with the followers of Islam. And then, so M2M Meeting Room comes after engaging with the followers of Islam. Before that, I'm just going to type it up real quick. I apologize. So the first thing you're going to go to is M2M upcoming events. Okay. Engaging the followers of Islam, M2M Meeting Room. And then you'll see our whole archive of recent episodes. So we hope you can join us on a regular basis to see those. So with that, we are going to just introduce what we're going to have tonight. And that's Samuel Green. Samuel Green, he has a website called engagingwithislam.org. He is a seasoned apologist, especially when it comes to Islam, done many formal debates, probably even more informal debates. So we're glad to have him with us, coming all the way from down under. And so anyway, we're glad to have everyone with us. What we're going to do is just say a word of prayer, and then we'll let him loose here. So God, we just are so thankful to have resources that are based on years of research and hard work by people like Samuel. Thank you for his efforts to bring the truth to us. And as we listen today, may we take in what we hear and be able to digest it and remember it in order to share it with Muslims at the opportune times that come to us. Thank you, Lord, for all your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, Samuel Green, thank you. Welcome back. And so last time it was from Muhammad to the Synoptic Qurans. Today is part 2 of that, and it's from the Synoptic Qurans to the Qurans of today. And for those who hear that word synoptic and wonder, what is that all about? Well, we're going to have Samuel explain that and get to his presentation. So it's all yours.
Right. Thank you. It's great to be with everyone today, and thanks for having me on your program. What I'll do is I'll just give a brief recap of what we did last time to refresh everyone's memory, and then we'll move on to part 2. And in that refreshing, I will talk about what the word synoptic means. So last week, or the last time I was on the program, we were looking at the question that often comes up for Christians and Muslims, and that is, for Christians when they talk to Muslims, and that is that the Muslim will often challenge the Christian and say that the Bible has been changed, and therefore we can, dismiss the Bible. It's that type of thing we often find as Christians. And this is because Muslims have been taught to say this about the Bible. They've been taught that they can dismiss it. And this is something that comes up that Christians need to think about. Now, how do we answer it? What I said last week was, you need to realize that when a Muslim says to you, the Bible's been changed, they are in effect only telling you half of their argument. They're only telling you half of their argument. And you need to consider the whole of their argument to make progress in this regard. Now, what is the whole argument? The whole argument is not that the Bible's been changed. The whole argument is the Bible's been changed and there is one perfect Quran. That's the whole argument. So it's a two-pronged argument. The Bible's been changed and there's one perfect Quran. Because simply saying the Bible's been changed in one sense means nothing, because they're not just there to say the Bible's been changed. They're there to promote Islam. And what they want to promote is the Quran. And so it's very important for you to realize that when you talk to a Muslim and they attack the Bible, they're either directly or indirectly wanting to say also that there's one perfect Quran. And so when it comes to discussing this subject with a Muslim, you need to first of all say, are you saying the Bible's been changed and there's one perfect Quran? You've got to get both of those issues out, because if you don't get both issues out and you just go defending the Bible, you're not actually engaging with the issue. And I've found you don't make any progress. So if a Muslim says to you, the Bible's been changed, you need to say, are you saying the Bible's been changed and there's one perfect Quran? And then they're most likely going to say, yes, there is. And you say, okay, well, let's have a look then at the evidence for that. And then we can go forward. We can look at the Quran, we can look at the Bible, and we're now on a level playing field. We're considering both books. So that's the way the question comes to us. Now, last week, what I showed you was that what Muslims say to us about the Quran is not actually true, even according to their sources. And so I wasn't taking a critical view of the Quran at this point. I wasn't looking at new modern scholarship and what it says about the Quran, which is a good thing to do. I was actually just saying, if we just look at the hadiths that we have and the Islamic history, which is the authentic Islamic histories, and the Qurans that we have, what is it that we find? And what we actually find is that the Muslim claim that there is one Quran is false, even according to their own standards, according to their own books. And so I'll just go very briefly now in point form. We saw that Muhammad did not remember the Quran perfectly. We saw that he needed to be reminded. We saw that he edited the Quran. He would recite a verse one way, and then situations would change, things would come up, and so he would say it again in a different way. And that there are verses about this even in the Quran itself, talking about the Quran changing and that this is God's will, that this happens. And so we then saw that his disciples actually recited the Quran in different ways, and that Muhammad allowed the Quran to be recited in different ways. We also saw that that Muhammad commissioned certain men to be teachers of the Quran, and that the way that Muhammad preserved the Quran was not writing it out himself. Muhammad never gathered the Quran himself into one volume. He had teachers that he appointed, men he appointed, and the hadith lists 4 particular ones, and Muhammad commissioned them to go and make his teaching known. And so we saw, made their own collections of the Quran. But what we saw was that when Muhammad died, there was no standard collection of the Quran from him, and that his disciples were doing their own things. And so after Muhammad dies, the situation arises that the Quran needs to be collected because it hasn't been collected. And so these famous teachers of the Quran, they then start making their own collections and bring it together. And then this brings us to the Synoptic Qurans, and that is that when they made their collections of the Quran, these collections were quite different. And so the collection of Abdullah ibn Masud, had 110 surahs, and the surahs were arranged differently to the Qurans we have today, and there were differences within the verses themselves. And again, this is what we looked at last time, and I'm just giving a brief summary here. Ubay ibn Ka'b, he had 116 chapters in his Quran. And again, they were arranged differently, and there were differences within the words of the verses as well. And so what I proposed was that what we had in early Islam were synoptic Qurans. Now, what does the word synoptic mean? The word synoptic comes from 2 Greek words, syn, which means with, and optic, I'm sure you know what the word optic means. It means something to do with the eye. It means how it's seen. And so it's synoptic. Synoptic means seen together, that they have a similar view and they're seen together. And this was a phrase that was coined for Matthew, Mark, and Luke, because as I'm sure you know, when you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're very similar. You know, the books are quite similar. Sometimes they're identical as you read stories. And so it can be a little hard to remember exactly where you read a verse between one of those three, because it may appear in a different chapter within each of the three. And so the Synoptic Gospels are what Christians are familiar with. They're books which are highly similar, yet each has got its own unique unique view of things. But they're what we have, the Synoptic Gospels. Now, what we find is that in the early decades of Islam, there were Synoptic Qurans. There were Qurans that were like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Sorry, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And what I mean by that is, if you read one of them, you could tell, yeah, this is the Quran. This is telling, you know, what Muhammad said, and you would know that it's a Quran. But they were arranged differently. There were small differences within the verses, and they were of different length. And that's what we have between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And so I want to suggest to you that there were Synoptic Qurans that were being used in the early centuries, and that's the correct way to understand what was happening. So that's where we finished off last time. And so we see that it begins with Muhammad reciting verses, going through an editing process from Muhammad never collecting it, his disciples collecting it, making different collections. And these collections are sort of what we would see the differences between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. A similar type of thing between Abdullah ibn Masud, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Zayd bin Thabit. They made their own collections. So that's where we got to last time. What I want to do now is to continue the story. What happened? Well, what we find is that Muhammad has died, and the jihadist soldiers are now conquering the Christians and the Persians. And they have success in this. They conquer all the Christian territories all across North Africa. They conquer, all of the land of the Middle East, and then across to India. And, the jihadists were successful. They're conquering. And these different companions of Muhammad, who had made these different collections of these Qurans, these Synoptic Qurans, they went to different regions. And so we find that Abdullah ibn Masud, he went to modern-day Iraq, and he was the teacher of the Quran to the Muslims who had now conquered Iraq. And Ubay ibn Ka'b, he went to Syria, what we would call modern-day Syria, and he became the teacher of the Quran to the Muslims who had conquered Syria. And so what we find is that these companions of Muhammad go to different regions, and they take with them their own collections of the Quran, remembering that they were the people that Muhammad had commissioned. And so they'd been commissioned to do this work, and they're now teaching these different collections in different parts of the Islamic Empire. Now, that's where our story starts, and we're going to see what actually happens at this time. So let me take you now. If you can screen share my notes, please. There we go. So let me just go down to here. I'll just scroll down. Sorry, here we go. Whereabouts? Chapter 9 complete. Okay. Okay, so here's the question I now have, and that is, what happened to these early different Qurans? Because as we've seen, they're being used at different points of the empire. And so what starts happening? Well, what we find is that these early regional synoptic Qurans, they haven't been preserved for us. because the differences between them led to arguments within the early Muslim community. So I'll read you a hadith here. Yazid Muawiyah was in the mosque in the time of Al-Walid bin Akbar, sitting in a group among whom was Hudhayfa. An official called out, "Those who know the reading of Abu Musa, go to the corner nearest the kinder door. Those who follow Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's reading of the Quran, go to the corner nearest Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's house." Their reading of Quran 2:196 did not agree. The one group read, "Perform the pilgrimage to God." The others read it, "Perform the pilgrimage to the Kaaba." Hudhayfa became very angry. His eyes reddened and he rose, parting his kamis to the waist, although in the mosque. This was during the reign of Uthman. Hudhayfa explained, "Will someone go to the commander of the faithful, or I shall go myself? This is what happened to the previous dispensations." So here we have a hadith recording that there are two different groups of Muslims, those who follow Abu Musa's reading of the Quran and those who follow Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's collection of the Quran. And you can see they have a difference in Surah 2, verse 196 on how it should be read. One says, "Perform the pilgrimage to God." The other says, "Perform the pilgrimage to the Kaaba." And obviously that's got different words in it. And this is starting to cause problems for the early Muslims. So these Muslims, they're following different collections of the Quran, and they're starting to notice this, and it's starting to cause problems. Now, I'll just read you some other quotes. The Syrians, we are told, contended with the Iraqis, the former following the reading of Ubay ibn Ka'b, the latter that of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, each accusing the other of unbelief. So you can see that tensions are starting to rise here. These Muslims are actually saying to each other, "We don't accept what you recite." And the last thing you want is jihadists disagreeing with each other, right? If you've got a whole lot of jihadists out on the battlefield conquering the rest of the world, you don't want them disagreeing with each other, because that's not going to be a good situation for the unity of the Muslim community. You could have warfare within yourself. And so this has now become a political decision. These differences in the Quran is now becoming a political decision. So here we see that the third caliph, Uthman, solved this political problem by choosing one of these collections to be the standard version for the entire Muslim community. And he had the other collections destroyed. So remember, Muhammad had actually commissioned these famous readers of the Quran to collect the Quran and to make their collections and to teach it to people. These collections, though, now have started to cause a problem. And so Uthman, the third caliph, his solution is going to be, let's make one standard version and destroy the rest. Okay, so let's read the hadith for this. Narrated Anas bin Malik, Hudhayfa bin al-Yaman came to Uthman at the time when the Muslims of Syria and the people of Iraq were waging war to conquer Armenia and Azerbaijan. So you can see it's in the context of jihad, and the Muslims from Syria and Iraq, the jihadists from Syria and Iraq are together, and they're fighting against the Christians and the Persians. And what's happening? They're noticing that they've got different Qurans, okay, as they're on jihad together. Hudhayfa was afraid of that is the Muslims of Syria and Iraq. He was afraid of their differences in the recitation of the Quran. So he said to Uthman, "O chief of believers, save this nation before they differ about the book, as the Jews and Christians did before." So Uthman sent a message to Hafsa saying, "Send us the manuscripts of the Quran Hafsa is Muhammad's wife, send us the manuscripts of the Quran so that we may compile the Quranic materials in perfect copies and return the manuscripts to you. Hafsa sent it to Uthman. Uthman then ordered Zayd bin Thabit, Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, Zayd bin Al-As, and Abdurrahman bin Hisham to rewrite the manuscripts in perfect copies. Uthman said to these three Qurayshi men, in case you disagree with Zayd bin Thabit on any point in the Quran, write it in the dialect of the Quraysh. The Quraysh was revealed in their tongue. They did so, and when they had written many copies, Uthman returned the original copies to Hafsa. Then listen to this. Uthman sent to every Muslim province one copy of what they had copied and ordered that all other Quranic materials, whether written in fragmentary manuscripts or whole copies, be burnt. So I hope you can see what's happening here. And again, this is from Sahih Bukhari. This is from the Islamic sources themselves. There is now problems. The Muslims are on jihad. They're going out fighting against the Christians and the Persians. As they're fighting, they're understanding that they've got different Qurans. You don't want to have jihadists out fighting, realizing that they've got different Qurans. This is now a political issue. The Caliph says that something needs to be done, and we need to make one standard Quran for the Muslim world. So he gathers sources, he gathers books, he gathers together a team of scribes, and they write one Quran, and then they send that out to these different regions, and they order that all the other Qurans be destroyed. Now, we need to understand who these other Qurans were written by. They're written by Abdullah ibn Masud, who was the man who recited the Quran first in Mecca. He was the man who recited the Quran to Muhammad himself. He is the one that Muhammad commissioned to teach the Quran. His Quran was destroyed. And he was not part of this team that made this Quran of Uthman. Okay, so that's what's happening. The companions of Muhammad who had made their own collections and were commissioned by Muhammad, their Qurans are now starting to be destroyed and replaced by this Quran that that Uthman has made. Now, let's just read what I've got here. Uthman's innovation was to make one Quran for the entire Muslim world. He was not trying to preserve these differences, but remove them. And this is how there came to be one Quran. The other versions made by the companions of Muhammad were destroyed. Even though Muhammad had commissioned several of these companions to teach the Quran, Uthman only kept one collection and destroyed the rest. A simple comparison would be if the early Christians destroyed the gospel according to Mark, Luke, and John, but only kept Matthew. Right? This may have made things simpler, but Christianity is richer for having preserved all these different testimonies, and Islam is poorer for having destroyed all these earlier testimonies to the Quran. The result is that today we only have one testimony of what Muhammad recited. Just think about that. We've only got one testimony to what Muhammad recited. The testimony of these other collections has almost totally been destroyed. So just imagine if today Syria still had the Quran of Ubay ibn Ka'b. Imagine if Iraq today still had the Quran of Abdullah ibn Masud. Then we'd actually be able to compare these different Qurans and see what type of emphasis each one had. And we'd be able to go back from there and see how faithfully each of them had transmitted what Muhammad had said. But as soon as you destroy all the witnesses except for one, now all of a sudden you can't test that one, right? So we can do this with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and scholars do this. We can actually look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke and look at how each of these has transmitted the story, the event, and we can compare them. And when you do that, you see that they're telling the same story in more or less exactly the same words, sometimes with a slight difference in emphasis, but that's okay. These are just what the apostles are doing. And we can see how faithful they have been, and we can see that they're very faithful to what happened in Jesus' life. And so we can be very certain about what happened in Jesus' life because we've got these different testimonies which we can compare and see that they are telling the same story. But imagine if we destroyed Mark, Luke, and John, and we just had Matthew. Now, if we'd just done that, then all we'd have is Matthew. Now, how could we tell whether or not Matthew had been faithful to what he's recording? Well, we can't anymore because we've only got Matthew. But as soon as we've got Mark, Luke, and John, we can now compare all of them and say, hey, they've all passed on the information the same way. They've done it, they've all done it well. So that event is more certain, right? And this is what historians would do. But when it comes to the Quran, we've burned all the Muslims burned the other testimonies of the disciples of Muhammad to how Muhammad recited the Quran. So we've now only got one, okay? So the Muslims are actually in a poor position. They've destroyed a lot of evidence. Now, let's keep going along. The next question for us is, did all the companions of Muhammad agree with Uthman's actions? So just think about this. Here are big Islamic figures. As I said, Abdullah ibn Masud, Ubay ibn Ka'b. These are among the best of the companions of Muhammad. These are like Peter and John. These are the disciples who are right with Muhammad from the beginning. They're big names in Islam. They may be unusual names to you. You may not have heard them before. But Ubay ibn Ka'b, Abdullah ibn Masud, they are the big disciples. As I said, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Abdullah ibn Masud, he was the first to recite the Quran in Mecca. He recited the Quran to Muhammad, and he was the one that Muhammad commissioned to teach others the Quran. He's a big name. He is a big name. Now, his Qurans have been commanded to be destroyed by Uthman. Is there any information about how Abdullah ibn Masud responded to this? Well, there actually is. There actually is. I'll just go down to here. So what we see here is Abdullah ibn Masud reported that he said to his companions to conceal their copies of the Quran, and further said, he who conceals anything, he shall have to bring that which he has concealed on the day of judgment. And then said, after whose mode of recitation do you command me to recite? You see what's happening here? He's telling his disciples, his followers, to hide their Qurans, right? I mean, why would you want to conceal your Quran? Why would you want to hide it? Well, it's because, as we see here, he is now being commanded to recite the Quran differently. See, after whose mode of recitation do you command me to recite? I, in fact, recited before Allah's messenger more than 70 chapters of the Quran, right? So here are people coming to him. He's saying to his disciples, conceal your Qurans. And then he's saying, who are you to tell me to recite the Quran differently? I recited the Quran before Muhammad. I recited 70 surahs before him. And then the companions of Allah's the companions of Allah's messenger, know that I have a better understanding of the book than they do. Okay, so these people are coming, and Abdullah's saying, I know the book better than these people, and they're telling me how to recite the Quran. If I were to know that someone had a better understanding than I would have gone to him. Shadkik said, I sat in the company of the companions of Muhammad. So now Abdullah is speaking amongst all the other companions, and I did not hear anyone reject to that. That is to what Abdullah ibn Masud was saying. So here we see someone is coming. These are the people who are sent from Uthman with saying you have to get rid of your Quran. Abdullah ibn Masud is saying to his followers, hide your Qurans from them. And who are you to tell me how to recite the Quran? I recited the Quran to Muhammad, and if there was anyone better than me, I would go to them. And the other companions of Muhammad who were there said, yeah, we agree with him. So I hope you can see here that Uthman's actions to destroy these other Qurans were not accepted by all of the companions of Muhammad. I'll read the next one. As Zuhari also narrated that Abdullah ibn Masud became upset because he was not chosen to copy the Quran. He said, "O you Muslims, how can I not be chosen?" Now let's just think about the first of that. What's that saying? Well, what we saw is that when Uthman made his version of the Quran, he got certain people to do it, but he did not get Abdullah ibn Masud to make that Quran. He didn't consult Abdullah ibn Masud. And you can see that Abdullah ibn Masud, he is upset that he was not included in that committee. And he said, how can I not be chosen? As I've said, he's the one who recited the Quran to Muhammad. He is the one commissioned by Muhammad to teach the Quran, yet he was not included in the Quran of Uthman, which is the Quran that we have today. Okay, so just to put this into Christian language, imagine if Peter, the Apostle Peter commissions Mark, and he works with Mark to write his gospel, and then someone else comes along, say the Apostle Paul, and said, get rid of the Gospel of Mark. We're not going to have that. You're just going to listen to me. Now, maybe that's not the best example, but that's what's happening here, where one group of Muhammad's followers are saying, don't listen to these other followers, but these other followers were there with Muhammad. Now, I'll keep going a little bit further. Ibn Masud also said to the people of Iraq, hide your Qurans in your homes, from Uthman. I will read the next bit. What have I got here? Narrated by Zir ibn Hubaysh, I met Ubay ibn Ka'b. Now, Ubay ibn Ka'b, he's another companion. He's not Abdullah ibn Masud. And he too was commissioned by Muhammad to teach the Quran. And we're told here, I met Ubay ibn Ka'b and said to him, Abdullah ibn Masud used to remove the verses of refuge from the Quran codices. That is, Abdullah ibn Masud used to take out the last few chapters of the Quran, saying both of them are not part of the Quran and do not include in it what is not part of it. So again, you can see this issue is working itself out. But the point I just want to make here is not all of the companions of Muhammad agreed with Uthman's innovation. But Uthman was able to enforce his decision. He's the caliph, he's got the military power on his side. And eventually all the companions had to accept it, whether they liked it or not. These companions now had to read the Quran from Uthman's text. They had to read the Quran from Uthman's text. Now, had Uthman not enforced his version of the Quran, other collections of the Quran would have remained until today. Okay, so just think about this. This is we think of Muslims today having one Quran across the entire Islamic world. And we'll see that's not completely true, but we think of there being basically one Quran across the Islamic world. If Uthman had not burned the early Qurans and standardized one text, what we would have had would have been Syria would have had a Quran with 116 surahs arranged differently and with differences within the verses. That would have been Ubay ibn Ka'b's Quran. There would have been Abdullah ibn Masud's Quran in Iraq. Iraq would have had 110 surahs and those surahs would have been arranged differently, and there would have been differences within those verses of different words. That would have been a very different world, wouldn't it? Imagine if there were those different Qurans like that, these Synoptic Qurans, each region with its own Quran, preserving the tradition that had been given to it from the companions of Muhammad who had originally brought the Quran to it. Now, that's not the case. What we have today is this one Quran, more or less, across the Muslim world. And again, it's not completely true, but I'll qualify that in a moment. But I hope you can see that this claim from Muslims that there's one Quran coming straight from Muhammad is simply not true according to their own sources. It's simply not true. There were different Qurans being used in the early decades of Islam, and they were quite different. They were quite different in numbers of surahs, content of the verses, and the arrangement of the verses. This situation has been was a political problem, and so the Muslims burned these early Qurans and standardized one version. So don't be deceived by Muslims when they're saying things to you like there's one perfect Quran, which, and it's always been that way. Let's keep moving on though. Now, the Uthmanic Quran, the Quran that Muhammad recited, and the Quran that Muhammad made, is it complete? Is it a complete Quran? Again, the answer is no. And there's ample evidence throughout the Hadith of authentic Quranic material which was not included in Uthman's Quran. So I'll read you an example, and this is from Sahih Muslim, so a reliable source. We used to recite a surah which resembled in length and severity Surah Al-Baqarah, that is Surah 9. I have, however, forgotten it, with the exception of this, which I remember out of it. If there were two valleys full of riches for the son of Adam, he would long for a third valley, and nothing would fill the stomach of the son of Adam but dust. And so here we have one of Muhammad's companions saying that they used to recite a Quran which length was of Surah 9. Now, Surah 9 is a long surah. I think it's got 129 verses, if I remember correctly. It's a long surah. And so it's saying, here is a surah which had these verses in it, but we don't have it anymore. Okay? And if you look at this phrase here about Adam and wanting, being greedy for more things, that's not in today's Quran, but it was recited and part of the Quran, but it's lost. Let's have a look at this next example. Allah sent Muhammad with the truth and revealed the holy book to him. And among what Allah revealed was the verse of Rajam, the stoning of married persons, male and female, who commit adultery. We did recite this verse and understood and memorized it. Allah's apostle did carry out the punishment of stoning, and so did we after him. I am afraid that after a long time has passed, someone will say, by Allah, we do not find the verse of Rajam in Allah's book, and thus they will go astray by leaving an obligation which Allah has revealed. Now again, there is no verse in the Quran about stoning people for adultery, yet here is a hadith from Sahih Bukhari. It's a Sahih, a trustworthy hadith, and it's saying, here is a verse which should be in the Quran, which is not. So what else have I got here? So this surah about the son of Adam and the verse about stoning for adultery are not in the Uthmanic Quran, which is the modern Quran. Therefore, those who compiled the Quran, who compiled the Uthman Quran, made choices about what to include and what to exclude. They did not include everything. Now, this is really important, right? It means that those people who put the Quran together, they had to choose. What are they going to put in? What are they going to leave out? They left out some things. They included other things. They didn't include everything that was there. These verses testify to this. These verses come from significant companions, and so this material would have been known. But the Quran that was made had choices made about what to include and what not to include. That is, there were canonical decisions made about the Quran, what to include, what not to include. Now, again, we did this as Christians. So as Christians, when we were compiling the New Testament, there were some books which we said, no, they shouldn't be in there, the Apocalypse of Peter or something. And, it might be a Gnostic gospel. And we say, no, the Gnostic gospels don't belong in our canon. We're not Gnostics. We believe in the goodness of creation. And so Christians made a choice as to, and they had to have discussions as to what went into the Bible. And that's fine. That's you can read about that and the criteria that they used. But so did Muslims. This is the point. So did the Muslims. The Muslims had to have discussions as to what was included and what wasn't included. So you mustn't be deceived when Muslims say to you, well, what about the Epistle of Barnabas? What about this? What about that? Why wasn't this book included? Well, we have our reasons for why we include what we did. And as I said, in most of the cases, it's because they were from Greek philosophy. And so they were just from a completely different worldview. And so, of course, we're not going to put them in the Bible. But the point is, they made exactly the same decisions. They had to choose what to put in and what to leave out. Okay? They had to make exactly the same decisions. And so they should not really exaggerate in this way. Now, I'll just scroll down to here. Now, the other thing is that, where's the book I've got on this? Sorry, I don't have the book right here in front of me. There's been a lot of work done recently comparing the ancient manuscripts of the Quran and that exist. And what we see is that even amongst the manuscripts that exist, there are differences. Now, let me see if I've got one of these here. No, I don't. Sorry, I don't have an example. They're in a link, but I'm not going to take you to that link right now. You can look it up here. So if you want to stop the video at this point, if you go to Answering Islam, there's the link. You can actually go there and compare ancient Qurans that exist to the modern day Quran. And what you'll find is that there are textual variants between them. Okay, there are textual variants. That is, the old Qurans are not identical to the new Qurans. Now, overall, they are. So most of the text is the same, but there are words that are different here or there. There are extra verses here or there. There are those types of things. There are corrections that are made. And so Muslims need to stop exaggerating. It's not that all ancient Qurans are absolutely identical. That's just simply not the case. And so we shouldn't, I don't want you to be deceived by Muslims saying that. Not all Qurans, not all ancient manuscripts of the Uthman Quran are identical to what we have today. Now, I want to continue on and now move to the Qurans as they exist today. Because what a Muslim may say to you is, have a look at the Qurans around the world today. They're all identical, right? Look at the Bible, they're all different. Now, very often they're just referring to different translations of the Bible. And so that's a moot point. It doesn't prove anything. There are different translations of the Quran. But what I want to show you now is that the Qurans that exist around the world today are not identical. And they actually have significant differences between them. And so we're going to look at those now. So let me just read to you this. When Uthman made his Quran, the Arabic script did not include the vowel markings or the dots to distinguish between certain letters. Okay, so let me just explain that a bit. Arabic is different to English in that the vowels in Arabic are mostly dots and dashes and like a U symbol above and below the letters. And when the first Qurans were made, they didn't have any of these vowel markings. And in fact, they didn't have any of the dots. Dots are also included in the Arabic script today to determine the difference between certain letters of the same shape. So for instance, a simple I, like in English, like an I like this. Imagine that, an I in English. If you put 2 dots above it, it's a T. If you put 1 dot above it, it's a Nun. If you put 2 dots below it, it's a Y. And so you can actually do that, and that one shape can be 5 different letters. So there's a certain ambiguity with the Arabic text. If you take out all these other markings, words can take different meanings depending upon where you put those dots and dashes. I'm going to give you some examples now, but the result is that the text of Uthman that he made, it didn't have these dots and dashes there. And so when people tried to read it, they could put the dots and dashes, or what's called vocalizing it, they could vocalize it in different ways. And this led to the one text being recited in a whole range of different ways. Now, today there are 10 different accepted ways of reciting the Quran. Right? So the word Quran actually means recitation, to recite it, recitation, but there are actually 10 different Qurans, 10 different recitations. And these are where the dots and dashes are put in different places to complete the words. So let me give you some examples here. So I'm going to compare 2 Qurans. I've got here the 2 main readings or qira'ats of the Quran are according to Imam Hafs. This is the most common one. And the other is the Quran according to Imam Warsh, and he's from North Africa. So this means if you want to read the Quran, you've actually got to do it according to a famous Imam, right? It is impossible to simply read the Quran. You cannot just read it. You have to read it according to somebody. You have to read it according to somebody. So let's have a look at some differences between, so I'm going to give you 5 differences between how the different Qurans around the world work. Now, actually, I haven't showed you these yet, but I'll hold some up because I've got them here. So here is the Quran according to Imam Warsh. That's the Quran according to Imam Warsh. Here is the Quran according to Al-Juri. Here is the most common Quran according to Imam Hafs. But what's really interesting is that you can get Qurans, and you can get these online. If you go to my article on Answering Islam, if you Google search different Arabic versions of the Quran, you'll find my article on Answering Islam, and I've given you the links where you can buy these for yourself. There are actually Qurans, you can see this one here, which has all the differences listed in the margin. So it's sort of a critical text. Now, let's have a look at some of these differences. So we've got here, according to Imam Hafs, takulana, which means you say. So that t at the front makes it an imperfect verb, and it's takulana, you say, in the plural there. But in the Quran, according to Imam Warsh, says yakulana, and that ya there with the plural at the end makes it to say they say. So you say or they say. Well, that's a different meaning. That changes the meaning of that verb and potentially the meaning of that verse. Let's have a look here. This is Kala. Kala is he said. Kul in Warsh is a command. It's the imperative. It's saying say, do this. Now, this is quite different in this one. This actually changes the whole meaning of the verse, right? Because kala means he, that is Muhammad, said, my Lord knows. So it's actually saying something that Muhammad said. Muhammad said, my Lord knows. But in the Warsh Quran, it's actually a command to the Muslim saying, say, my Lord knows. So that actually changes the whole tense and the meaning of what the verse is about. Now, in this case, there's an extra word, so that there's a word difference. So it's Allah, Allah, Hua, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this exactly, Ayin, something like that. Ayinya, something like that. Whereas over here, you'll notice there's no word Hua. And so this is saying Allah is the self-sufficient. This one is just saying Allah, the self-sufficient. Now, there's not a big lot of difference in this case, but one has an extra word. The Warsh Quran has a different number of words. So let me hold these up. This Quran has less words than this Quran, but they're both being used in the world today. Okay. Now, this is an interesting one. So this is saying hum abad. So this is saying we are slaves. Rahman, Rahman. Sorry, my Arabic's terrible. I didn't read these in advance. I'm sorry. But it's saying they are slaves of the most gracious. Rahman. Okay, so they are slaves of the most gracious. But you'll notice that this word has different vowel markings to this one. So you see this one, there's a mark there, there's a mark there. Sorry, it's got a different dot. Now this one, the dot is there. This one, the dot is there. Now that changes this word. In this one, the word means slaves. Okay, over here, the word means with. So you can see how putting a dot up or below makes a big difference. So this is, they are slaves of the most gracious, and this is, they are with the most gracious. That's two different meanings. It's two different meanings. The last one I'll look at is here. So this is her Lord. So Rabha, Rabiha, her Lord, and Kutabiha, something like that. Her Lord and his books. So that's in the plural. Over here, it's speaking about Mary, her Lord and his book. And so one's in the plural, one's in the singular. Now, there's approximately 1,354 small differences between these two Qurans. Okay, so there's a significant number. This is not insignificant. Again, if Muslims say to you that there's one perfect Quran and it's free from variation, you need to know this so that you won't get deceived and that you can point this out to them. Because as you point it out to them, all of a sudden they're going to think differently about attacking the Bible. Because remember what their argument was? Their argument was there's one Quran, sorry, that the Bible's corrupted and there's one Quran. As soon as you start showing them that there are these different Qurans in the world today, and you can point out these differences, all of a sudden they can't be as arrogant anymore. All of a sudden they can't be as confident anymore. All of a sudden now they can't go dismissing the Bible as quickly as they did before. Now, I might just finish up there. I think that that's probably going to be enough for today because it's 10:02, and I might finish there and go back, and we'll see if you want to do anything to finish up. So where are we? Here we are.
That was great.
Right, so Carmen, I've got sort of 10 more minutes. Did we want to do anything else? Did you have any questions or comments?
We do have some questions. Were you finished?
Yeah.
Were you ready for questions?
Yeah, I thought I'll finish there and give 10 minutes for questions.
Okay. I know I had a bunch of questions written down, but as you went on, you answered most of them.
Yes.
I know, let's see, we had one. So first, let me ask, someone wants to know, where can they find your materials? Do you have a YouTube, a website? I suggested your book already in the chat, but do you have somewhere they could go, a website?
Yeah, thank you for that question. My homepage, my website, my home website is engagingwithislam.org. engagingwithislam.org, all one word. And if you go there, all these resources are there. So the material that I've taken you through today is a free downloadable booklet that you can get from that website. If you go to Evangelistic material, you click on that in the margin, and then you'll see there's a Bible for Muslims, and then there's a whole lot of booklets that I have written, and you can download those files. You can take them to a printer, and just for a few dollars, they can print them out as a nice booklet for you. So that's the website. I've got material on answering Islam as well. So if you go to Answering Islam and just look up Samuel Green, you'll find my pages there.
Thank you for that. That's a lot of work. You did the work for all of us and made it super easy. I didn't know that myself, so I will definitely. I mean, I knew about the Answering Islam page, but not you said the evangelistic material. I didn't see that, so that's great. So I have a question. As far as I sat here, I watched it. We all did. You show proof of everything that you're saying. It's not anything that it's not your opinion. You're showing proof. But my question is, when you present this type of stuff to Muslims, what is their objection? How do they even justify any of that?
Yeah, what they will say is, well, first of all, a lot of them won't try to justify it. It'll be a shock to them. Okay, and that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it will be a shock, and so they'll go, "Wow, I've been lied to by my leaders." Okay, my leaders have told me there's one Quran, and there's not. Right? I need to evaluate things, and so what I'm hoping is that by showing this about the Quran, they're not going to be as dismissive about the Bible. So that's the first response that they may have is just to be in a bit of shock and to be a bit more quiet when it comes to dismissing the Bible. Now, for those who do want to justify it, what they will say is that all of these 10 different Qurans are all authentic, and that Muhammad allowed the Quran to be recited in different ways. And so, we're allowed to have these 10 different Qurans. Now, if they say that, then you need to say, okay, but please stop saying there's one Quran, right? That's what you need to do, because the impression, and remember, a lot of arguments that people create, that they try to do by just creating an impression. And so that they want to attack the Bible and show you things in the Bible, and just by attacking the Bible, create the impression that there's one Quran without actually giving you any evidence, right? So you attack the Bible, and this works well. You attack the Bible, you show things about the Bible, you show textual variants in the footnotes of the Bible and say, look at that. And all the time you're creating an impression to the people who don't know. You're creating an impression that the Quran's not like that, because, I wouldn't attack the Bible if it was the same with the Quran. I mean, that's just, that'd be ridiculous to attack the Bible if it was the same with the Quran, so you wouldn't do that, but they do. This is the point. And so you just need to point out to them and say, well, why don't you say that? So their response is going to be either shock. They might just be quiet at that point and go, wow, I didn't realize that. I'm not sure I can talk about anything now. Or it might be that they'll say, well, all of these 10 versions are correct, and Uthman did the right thing, and Uthman did the right decision. The 10 versions of the Quran that we have today are the 10. They're all authentic, and you just want to say, well, if you're going to have that view, if that's what you're going to say, then stop saying there's one Quran. Stop saying there's no differences between the Quran. You got to stop saying what you're saying. So that's how I'd respond.
So then you think, like, if you get that far with them and let's say they get upset and walk away, then the only people that they're going to go to are their imams, right, to ask these questions. Yeah. And then they're going to feel justified, like, oh, well, whatever the imams tell them, they're going to be like, oh, well, that makes sense. Or it's...
Well, sort of. I mean, if they go to their imam who has told them there's only one Quran, and then he's now saying, oh, yeah, there's other ones. I mean, how would you feel if someone had been teaching you there's only one, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, no, there's actually lots.
Right.
It's going to make you go, well, hang on, my imam's not, they haven't told me the truth here. I think it's going to, bring about a certain deconstruction for them, where they're going to have to start pulling apart what they've been taught. And I mean, that's what I'm hoping, that it's going to start to deconstruct their faith.
So the issue is not like, if they were to have just said from the beginning that we have these different ones, and if they would just have had that claim from the beginning, then fine, right? I mean, it's still fake. But the fact that they're claiming that there's one, that it's never been altered, it's perfectly preserved. So that is the issue, right? That is what we're attacking. Okay.
Yeah. What we're saying is, I mean, I've never had a Muslim get up in a debate or in any time and say, there are 10 different versions of the Quran, 10 different ways the Quran's recited. Like, they never say that.
Yeah.
Right? What they say, right? What they will say is they're going to attack the Bible, right? They attack the Bible, and they try to create an impression that in attacking the Bible, the Quran's better.
Right.
And so that's why when you're talking to them, you've got to say, hang on, are you saying the Bible's corrupted and there's one perfect Quran? And then they're most likely going to say yes, or that they might just be a bit more cautious there. If they know about all these different versions, they might go, oh, no, I'm not trying to say there's one Quran. And all of a sudden, you're going to have a different conversation, aren't you? Right? And so this is why I'm saying, as soon as they're attacking the Bible, you've got to say, okay, are you trying to create the impression that there's one Quran? And then you say, well, let's examine that. And as you examine it, their whole argument falls over. And then, hopefully they won't even want to talk about it anymore. Hopefully we'll stop attacking the Bible. And then you can say, well, let's just read some of the Bible. Let's just read some of the Quran and just compare it and just take them as they are and not stop attacking each other. Or you stop attacking my book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I anyone walked into it, let's say an Islamic bookstore, would I be able to find all of these, or an Islamic bookstore will only have one type?
No. Look, it depends on the Islamic bookstore and how technical they are. So I have gone to my local Islamic bookstore. Well, I had to, in another state, so it's not in my state, but it's the main one, one of the main ones in Australia. And I was able to buy a Quran which had the differences between about 5 of the Qurans underlined in the text. So it had the Hafs version of the Quran, but then when you opened it up, it had red lines underneath showing where it was different, and then it had the differences in the margin. So I just bought that from an Islamic bookshop. I mean, the point is, it is just Islam. Like, this is historic Islam, and again, see, this is where my approach is different to, say, other people who are looking at the critical issues of the Quran, and there's a lot of good work being done there, actually casting doubt over, the authenticity of the hadiths and whether or not the Quran was compiled at a certain time. I'm not trying to do that, and I'm not critical of that. But what I'm saying is, let's just take the hadith and the story that Muslims give us themselves, let's look at their own material and see what it says. And even when you look at their own stuff, it does not say one Quran. You know, their own stuff says it was edited. You know, Muhammad forgot it. Muhammad forgot it. It was edited. His companions made different collections. Those collections caused problems. They burned most of them, standardized one text. Even that text was vague. And so it's developed into a whole range of other readings. And we have 10 Qurans today. Well, that's a very different story, isn't it? You know, but that's their story. And I'm saying that's your story. You know, if you're going to attack the Bible, at least tell the truth about, you know, at least tell your story. At least tell your story. Don't just say nothing and create this impression that there's one Quran. So I'm just trying to work from their sources so that they can't argue with it.
Yeah, I think also a lot of how they get defensive is just learned behavior from generation. I know a lot don't even really understand what they're saying. It's just repetitive stuff. And it's just, to me, it breaks my heart. I really wish that they would really just listen to this information and have an open heart about it, open mind about it, and really see the evidence for what it shows, you know, and realize that this religion is false. It's not true. And to, you know, follow teachers like you and that have the evidence and makes it easy for them. I know it's hard for them because I can't imagine living my whole life believing something and being proud of being that, to find out that it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's just, it would be devastating. I know how I felt when I was following, you know, for a little while, I was being taught by a oneness pastor, and I know how I felt when I realized that was a lie. It really affected me because I believed it.
Yeah.
So I really pray for, you know, the Muslims out there, or anyone in a false religion, actually, that they just really seek it and not blindly follow. There's so much information out there that they can utilize to find the truth. But I know that the city that I'm originally from, they're not encouraged to do any kind of studying really outside of the mosque and on Friday nights, you know, they're not encouraged really to do that. And so I see how they blindly just follow, and it's sad. Okay, let me see if we have any questions. Do you guys in the chat have any questions, comments? I know we got some people that are a big fan of yours in there in the chat today, so that's always encouraging.
Yeah.
You've got some groupies. Yeah, we just got a lot of people that are just really you know, encouraging and appreciate what you do and are here for it. And now they're glad that they have the material so they can download it and use it to our benefit. So on my end, it looks like we're good with the questions. Yeah, there's a comment.
Thank you. Thanks,
Great.
Kamal.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Eric, are you around? Do you have any questions on your side? If not, is there anything else there he is.
Hi, Carmen. Yeah, you asked the main question I had. You asked it. Great answer. And then I wanted to also just follow up so Uthman, he burned the Qurans. Okay, is this something that Muslims will accept, or do they reject that?
Well, it's from Sahih Bukhari, and it is the standard narrative. Right? This is their narrative.
So if they accept it, what is their response when you bring to them?
Well, it's as I've said before, that for many of them, they haven't read those hadiths. They don't know about the standardizing process that the Quran went through. And so many of them just have the idea that Muhammad recited the Quran and it was written down, checked by him, and we have it today. It's as simple as that. That's what they're told at the popular level. When they're confronted with these hadiths, as I said, there can be different responses that they can say, well, you know, Uthman did the right thing, or they might be in a shock over it and go, wow, I didn't realize that. So, you know, they can have a number of responses, But of course, the Christian response has got to be not to be deceived. When Muslims say to you, you know, it's a nice, simple process, there's one Quran, you want to say, no, actually, there were multiple different Qurans collected. You've got a whole story here. There's a whole process that you've got to explain.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing I would say about my material on my website is, if you use it, always use the latest version from the website, because I'm always updating it. I'm always, you know, using the arguments and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And so then I'll update my material, put it up online. And so always go to the website to get the most recent version of that leaflet.
I think the link you shared from last time, it wasn't directly a hyperlink shown on the main website. So it's engagingwithislam.org if you're watching. But there was another page where if you actually go to the link that was on the screen during that broadcast, you can go and find that. But if you go to your website, I didn't see it directly clickable.
It should be. I mean, I can.
What subject? There's a sidebar on the side, right?
Yeah. So if you go to Evangelistic and Apologetic Resources.
Okay.
If you click on that, so that's the fourth item down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you scroll down. You've got, first of all, you've got a Bible for Muslims. And then you've got evangelistic and apologetic booklets and leaflets. Do you see that?
Yes. And then...
Do you want me to screen share that?
No, I've got that. Okay. You can if you want to, for the audience.
Yeah. How about I just do a quick screen share? Screen share. Where are we? Window. I can't see actually how to do that. It might be in a screen that's a little bit different. Windows. Can you see it now?
Yes, we could see it.
Okay, so this is my Engaging with Islam website. And so that's the home page. Then if you go down the side here, you've got evangelistic and apologetic resources. You click on that, and there's a Bible for Muslims. And then you scroll up. You've got evangelistic and apologetic booklets and leaflets. And you've got a whole stack of them down here. So that's the one I was looking at today, the preservation of the Quran. You click on that, and then that opens up, and then you can download that file and print it, get it printed.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
There you go. All right. Thank you, Samuel. Appreciate your time. Oh,
wait.
Carmen,
So we just want to say that Reverend Samuel Green will be with us every fourth Sunday of the month. So all his little groupies, make sure you come back. Well, every week, but just make sure on the 4th to see him specifically.
That's funny.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it's a pleasure being with you. Thanks for having me on your program.
Thanks for being with us. Enjoyed it.